Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the 26th day of the month of Av 5779, the 27th day of August 2019. This coming Shabbat we read Parashat Re'eh. It is also the first day of Rosh Chodesh. This coming Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh Elul, the month preceding the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and of course Sukkot. It's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, meaning the first day will be observed on Shabbat, and the second day, Motzei Shabbat, meaning Saturday night and Sunday. You're asking, where's Rabbi Richman? Rabbi Richman at this moment is very, very busy preparing for his upcoming trip, his speaking engagement tour of India, which begins next week. And he apologized, but he has lots of preparation to do and couldn't be present for this week's Temple Talk. To tell you the truth, and I always try to tell you the truth on Temple Talk, even not in Temple Talk. It's always a good thing to try to tell the truth and to tell the truth. To tell you the truth, I'm actually recording this not on the 26th of Av or the 27th of August as I announced, but a day earlier. Because I also am very busy tomorrow and will not be able to record. But just for tradition's sake, I kept the date as the traditional Tuesday date. But, I almost considered not recording this week. It's August. It's the middle of the summer. Here in Israel, August is when everybody takes a vacation. All the summer programs for kids, which take place in July, are finished by August, and school doesn't start for another few weeks. So now is the time where people pack up the kids, go here, go there, take time off. Things quiet down. A lot of things shut down in August. And I thought of doing the same, 1 week. But when I realized it's Parashat Re'eh, I just couldn't. I couldn't abandon the microphone in Temple Talk on this week, because Parashat Re'eh is such a beautiful parsha, as they all are, but it is such a significant parsha, and it is such a, trying to think of the word, it's not coming to me, it's a watershed parsha. Why do I say that? Moshe, again, let's just reiterate, the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim in Hebrew, which we've been reading, is all Moshe. It's his take on everything that's transpired over the past 40 years, and also his vision of what will be in the land of Israel, where he will not be entering. But Moshe clearly loves Israel more than anything. He loves Israel, he loves his people, he loves God. This is what Moshe loves. This is what Moshe lives for. And despite the pain that he has expressed at his own being unable to enter into the land, he is doing everything in his power to prepare the people for what will be in the land of Israel, what to expect when they enter, what they need to do, what their obligations are, what their responsibilities are, the tremendous opportunities that await them there, the potential of the land, what they need to do in order to unlock that potential. And of course, it all boils down to keeping the Torah, staying on the path of Torah, sticking with the God of Israel, and doing all that with joy and with enthusiasm and with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. And if you keep to that program, all good things will happen. So last week's Parsha Ekev, Moshe was talking about the beautiful land, the mountains and the valleys and the streams, the rains that will fall, the crops that you can raise, the fruit that you can grow, all these wonderful things. And of course, the secret is, of course, keeping the Torah and staying close to God. And there'll be many, many temptations inside the land to God forbid abandon the way of Torah. God forbid abandon the God of Israel, because there are other nations living in the land and they have their own gods, and you might be tempted to learn how they worship their gods. You might be tempted to give it a try, God forbid. All this is completely forbidden, and all this will simply arouse God's anger and cause only problems for Israel. So Moshe emphasizes over and over and over again the need to stick to the program. Also, we've been learning about this great land that you're entering into, and it's a big land. And each tribe will pursue its own inheritance. You know, there will be a lottery, and you'll be instructed according to the lottery which part of the land your tribe is to inherit, and then it's up to you. You go, you settle, you build, you fight the enemy that's there, you fight the people whose land you're going to be taking, if need be. So every different tribe has a lot of responsibility and its own program. And it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. In fact, Moshe warned. He said in last week's Parashat that disinheriting the current inhabitants of the land is not going to happen overnight. It's a process, he says. It's going to take time. He said if it happened too quickly and the land remained occupied because you're still relatively small in numbers, then wild animals would occupy the land, and then you'd have to fight the wild animals. So if we understand what Moshe is saying, that there's a program for everything. It's all part of a plan. And every tribe needs to strive to do its very best to inherit the land that it's been given. And it will happen in due time. All good. Now, one of the things that Moshe addresses in this week's Parsha, Re'eh, which means see. In fact, before I continue my statement, my sentence, I just want to read the first few verses of Re'eh because it's just so beautiful. I'll read it in Hebrew, and then I will translate it into English. Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala et habracha asher tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem asher anochi metzaveh etechem hayom v'haklala im lo tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem וסרתם מן הדרך אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום ללכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים אשר לא ידעתם. See, Re'eh, see, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, that you hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God, that I command you today. And the curse, if you do not hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God, and you stray from the path that I command you today, to follow gods of others that you did not know. So, that's it in a nutshell. See, a blessing and a curse. It's your choice. It's always been our choice, since Adam, right? Since Adam chose to eat from the fruits, the forbidden fruit. It's been our choice either to take up the blessing, the bracha, or be burdened by the curse. It's pretty simple, but apparently it's also a big challenge, and it was a big challenge for the people of Israel in those days. And again, as I start to say before, the people are going to inherit their own tribal lands, and they're going to build their own houses and their own communities. And whereas for 40 years now, they've lived in an encampment, a lot of people, and it's a very, very big encampment, but they lived in an encampment centered around Mishkan, the tabernacle. And they've all been, within eyesight of one another, and they've all been within listening range of one another. And at the center is the tabernacle, where they could all go to visit fairly simply. They were not far away from it. But now they're going to be settling 4 corners of this land, and it's going to be a little more of a challenge to keep that unity. And this is exactly what Moshe addresses. And here, in Parashat Re'eh, we get the big reveal, right? The big reveal. What's the big reveal? Well, I'm going to read it to you right now. I apologize, I didn't mention before the verses of Parashat Re'eh. The verses I was reading from before, the first verses of Re'eh were from chapter 11 of the book of Deuteronomy, and it was verse 26, 27, and 28. Now, in chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, Moshe is commanding the people what they need to do when they come across forms of idolatry in the land, and what they need to do is completely eradicate it. Whether that means now I am going to read from verse 2 of chapter 12. You shall utterly destroy the places where the nations that you are driving away worship their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills, and under every leafy tree. You shall break apart their altars. You shall smash their pillars, and their sacred trees shall you burn in a fire. Their carved images shall you cut down. You shall obliterate their names from that place. Okay. And now for the big reveal. You shall not do this to Hashem your God. Rather, only at the place that Hashem your God will choose from among all your tribes to place his name. There shall you seek out his presence and come there. And there shall you bring your burnt offerings and feast offerings, your tithes and what you raise up with your hands, your vow offerings and your free will offerings, and the firstborn of your cattle and your flocks. You shall eat there before Hashem your God, and you shall rejoice with every undertaking. You shall eat there before Hashem your God, and you shall rejoice with your every undertaking, you and your households, as Hashem your God has blessed you. Whoa, this is the big reveal. Yes, there's going to be a Beit HaMikdash. There's going to be a holy temple in the land of Israel. It's the place, hamakom in Hebrew, the place. The word hamakom is synonymous with the Mikdash in Hebrew, the place that God will choose for his presence to dwell. Well, this is the exact same language as the in the desert, where God's presence dwells in the Mishkan, from the same word as shochen, to dwell. And the God's presence, in fact, is referred to as the Shekhinah, from the same word. So the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is now going to be established as the holy temple in the land. Where in the land? God will let us know in good time. But the big news here, the big news is that if anybody was worried, and you know what? You're listening to everything Moshe is telling you, and it sounds so exciting. And you're getting out of the desert, and you're going to be in a land where that's fruitful, and you're going to be able to prosper, and you're going to be able to have a good life. But then you might wonder, well, this is a land God's promising to us and blessing us with, but where's God going to be? Because up till now, for 40 years, God's been traveling with the people, and God's presence has been in the midst of the people. Well, Moshe says it's going to be the same in the land of Israel. God's presence will be in the midst of the people, and the people will be invited and obligated to visit God in his place in the land of Israel, as we know, 3 times a year. Of course, we knew this already, but here we're getting reconfirmation that historically it is going to happen. Moshe is telling the people it is going to happen. And if it doesn't happen the first day, and it doesn't happen the first year, it will happen in the meantime. Of course, we know that the tabernacle would enter in with the people to the land of Israel, and would reside in different places in the land of Israel for many hundreds of years, because this was indeed going to be a long historical process until the Beit Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, could be established. And it really couldn't be established until the people were fully settled and until the land was safe and established, and Israel's rule was established in the land. At which point, then, of course, the people would build the Holy Temple and would worship in the Holy Temple. I just want to say that also says in this week's reading, it also says that it says so many beautiful things. Here, this is what I'm looking for. Chapter 12, verse 8. You shall not do like everything that we have done here today. Rather, every man what is proper in his eyes, for you will not yet have come to the resting place or to the heritage that Hashem, your God, gives you. So Moshe is saying something very interesting. He's saying until you're in the land, until you're really established as a nation in the land, everybody kind of does what's in their own eyes. Every tribe, I guess, will go its own way, and of course historically we realize this, and it's said many times in the book of Judges that everyone was kind of doing their own thing. There was not a lot of unity because, again, every tribe had been preoccupied with establishing its presence in its tribal portion, and less attention or energy could be given toward the nation as an indivisible unit. And of course, that all changed historically when Israel finally appointed a king. First King Saul, and then King David. So again, Moshe is anticipating that time. And he says, after he gives that heads up, it's not going to be like that. You can't all do your own thing. There's a certain theme here. And we see that theme, again, like I said, developing historically between the time that Israel entered the land and the time of King David, that the tribes went their own way, the nation became less centralized, and sometimes they would fight wars, and some tribes would join together, and other tribes wouldn't, and some tribes would get involved in some kind of horrible idolatry, and other tribes would rise up against them. There were problems in the land of Israel during that time of the judges, and again, Moshe addresses this by again mentioning the Holy Temple. He continues in verse 10. You shall cross the Jordan and settle in the land that Hashem, your God, causes you to inherit, and he will give you rest from all your enemies around, and you will dwell securely. It shall be that the place where Hashem, your God, will choose to rest his name, there shall you bring everything that I command you, your burnt offerings and your feast offerings, your tithes and what you raise up with your hands, and the choicest of your vow offerings that you will vow to Hashem. You shall rejoice before Hashem, your God, you, your sons and your daughters, your slaves and your maidservants, and the Levite who is in your cities, for he has no share and inheritance with you. Beware for yourself, lest you bring up your burnt offerings in any way, any place that you see, rather only in the place that Hashem will choose among one of your tribes. There shall you bring up your burnt offerings, and there shall you do all that I command you. So, again, there is a parallel between the development of the people as a nation in the land and the rise, the appearance, the beginning of the Holy Temple in the land, and it all comes in good time. When the people are ready, that's when the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, will be built. Now, you may say, well, what's the mystery here? Where's it going to be built? Why isn't God saying? Why isn't Moshe saying where it's going to be built? This has been a question that's been asked for thousands of years. And there are two very practical reasons for this. And that is, one is that, well, if you let on that your enemies where it's going to be built, then, why won't they just combine their armies and make a garrison there in that place to prevent you from building it there? And the second reason, which may even be a more significant reason, is what almost suggested here in what I just read, where in verse 14 it says, rather, only in the place that Hashem will choose among one of your tribes. Okay, one of your tribes. The Holy Temple will be built in somebody's tribal portion. Lest the tribes begin fighting among themselves, squabbling as to whose portion it will be built in, and every tribe trying to grab that piece of land, because they know that's where the Holy Temple will be built. It's best at this point in time to allow it to remain a mystery. And of course, in due time, when King David united the nation and he conquered the city of Jerusalem from the Jebusites, then God revealed to King David and to the prophet Samuel where the temple would be built. And at that point, it was occupied and controlled by Israel, by the Israelite kingdom. And yes, it would be built in the portion of Judah and Binyamin. Yehuda and Binyamin. Part of the temple was in one, and part of the temple was in the other. Again, signifying really the unity. If we realize that Binyamin was that figure all the way back in the book of Genesis, the story of Yosef and his brothers, Binyamin was the one who united them all. So again, Binyamin here is uniting the area of Judea, King David, Judah, with the areas north of that belong to the sons of Yosef. Unity, the Holy Temple. Here's the music. So I'm going to take a break and I'll be right back. I hope you'll be there with me. Temple Talk. Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is still Yitzchak Reuven here in Jerusalem, Israel. And today is the 26th day of the month of Av, 5779, the 27th day of August, 2017. We've been talking about Parashat Re'eh, the Torah reading, which we'll be reading this coming Shabbat, which happens to also be the first day of Rosh Chodesh, first day of the new month of Elul. It's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, Shabbat and Yom Rishon, that is Sunday. And before we get back to Parashat Re'eh, let me just explain again, if anybody's picking up right here, that Rabbi Richman is busy preparing for his upcoming trip to India next week. And so he's not able to be with me in the studio. And I might add that it's a historic trip to India because it's the first time that the Temple Institute has ever made the trip to India. And Rabbi will be giving, Rabbi and Mrs. Richman will each be giving talks on 4 different evenings over the course of next week in different cities in India. And it's very exciting that he was invited to India, and it's very exciting that he will be able to teach Torah in the subcontinent of India. And I hope to be able to report on his trip as it progresses. It's a short trip. It's just over a week, but it's going to be a very busy one for the rabbi. And like I said, I hope that I can report on the trip as it's progressing via our Facebook page so everybody can be informed as to what happens when Rabbi Richman teaches Torah over there in the land of India. Just mention a little bit about upcoming month of Elul, which is really the 6th month of the calendar year, the Hebrew year, beginning with the month of Nisan, the first of your months, the month that we celebrate Passover in. It's the 6th month, and it is the month that precedes Tishrei, which is the month of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, which is then followed by Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, convocation, I think is the way to say it. And of course, Elul is a month of tremendous preparation, a spiritual preparation for the upcoming year and for standing before the King on Rosh Hashanah. And it's a month of tremendous potential for not just righting our own wrongs and changing our path, but redefining ourselves and getting a grip on our own personal trajectories once again and saying, you know what, whatever went awry for me or, over the past year, if I took a wrong turn or just kind of got lost in the haze, now's my chance to do a recalibration and to reset all my dials and reinvigorate myself and rededicate myself toward the right path, the proper path for me, vis-a-vis myself, my people, my God. And that's the beauty and the potential of the month of Elul. And as we teach every year, Elul, which in Hebrew is spelled Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, is an acronym for the words from the verse in Song of Songs, Ani ledodi v'dodi li. I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. And that intimate statement in the context of Elul is indicative of our relationship with Hashem, with God, and of emphasis is on our initiative. Ani ledodi, I am my beloved's, right? It's up to me. It's up to me to be for my beloved. It's up to me to be for God, and God will be for me. And that really is the mantra, if you will, of the month of Elul, which we'll be talking about much, much more in the coming weeks. In the meantime, a few more things I'd like to say about Re'eh. And now I'm going to go back again to the beautiful title of this week's Torah portion, which once again begins in the book of Deuteronomy and in chapter 11, verse 26. And Re'eh, as we said before, means see. 2 weeks ago we read Parashat Et Hanan, in which we heard the first verse and paragraph of the Shema prayer / statement that we say twice a day. Shema, hear Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. Hear. And then last week in Parashat Ekev we read what is the second paragraph of the Shema that we say daily. But the Shema is based on hearing. Hear. Take it in through your ears. Take this truth into your ears. Hashem, our God, Hashem is one. This week, it's Re'eh. Take this truth in through your eyes. Moshe / God / Torah wants us to be connected to ourselves, to who we are, to connected to our God, connected to our land, connected to our Torah via all our senses. Through our sense of hearing, our sense of sight, our sense of taste, our sense of touch, all our senses, our sense of smell. We have to be connected. But here. It's so significant in my eyes, no pun intended, that Parashat Re'eh, which is see. How do you see with your eyes? In this Parsha, we get, as I put it before, the reveal about the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. This is the Parsha in which all of a sudden, boom, Moshe starts to talk at length about the Holy Temple, what it's about, what you're going to do, what your obligations are, what your potential is, what your merits are, and the fact that Hashem is going to dwell, His name and His presence will dwell in your midst, in the land. And it all begins with Re'eh, see. And why do I find that so significant? Because, as we know, even though they're keeping it a secret, as we know, that place where the Holy Temple will be is on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. And as we know, that was the place that it was destined to be from the beginning of creation, even before creation. So you may ask, well, how come the children of Israel didn't know? Well, they knew the tradition, but the exact location, they didn't know. Okay, but we know from back in the book of Genesis, in Parashat Vayera, and actually in chapter 22 of Genesis, verse 1. And it happened after all these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he replied, here I am. And he said, please take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Bring him up there as an offering upon one of the mountains, which I shall tell you. Okay? We're talking, of course, about the binding of Yitzchak, known in Hebrew as the Akedah. And, of course, this is where God said, take your son. That's what we just read. And Moshe did precisely as God commanded, and then at the crucial moment, the critical moment, when Avraham raised up his hand to actually perform the slaughter, that the angel called his name and stayed Avraham's hand and said, now that I know, now that God knows that you're willing to do as God has commanded. Of course, God is not going to command you to do this, but you've proven yourself. And exact words are in verse 12. And he said, do not stretch out your hand against the lad, nor do anything to him. For now I know that you are a God-fearing man, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, from me, Hashem. And Abraham raised his eyes. He's been raising his eyes all along here. It's been a very visual. He raised his eyes when he first see the mountain, the Makom, from afar. And now he raises his eyes again, and he saw, behold, a ram. Afterwards, caught in a thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as an offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that site Hashem Yireh, as it is said this day, on the mountain Hashem will be seen, or in Hebrew Hashem Yireh, meaning, what am I getting at? Abraham calls this place, Mount Moriah, Hashem Yireh, God will see. God will see his people. God will see the heart of his people. God will see the trust of his people. God will see that his people are his. Just as God opened up Abraham's eyes so he could see this ram, and the ram would replace his son, and this is a covenant between Abraham and God. And that covenant will be perpetuated in the Holy Temple in this place. And it is a covenant that was made possible via the eyes, the vision, which is why Abraham named the place Hashem Yireh, the mountain where Hashem will see. And what does Hashem see? He sees every year his people come to celebrate the three regalim, the three festivals of Sukkot and of Passover, Pesach, and of Shavuot. He sees the people come on Rosh Hashanah, and he sees the people on Yom Kippur, and of course, people are in the Holy Temple every day of the year. And they are seen there, which is a commandment that we be seen there, and Hashem sees us, and it's all good. And this is the perpetuation and the commemoration of this original covenant between Hashem and Abraham on this place. And when you think about it in this context, you realize, wow. Yeah, God's plans are long-term. That's one thing we realize. And you realize how dear this place is to Hashem, and how not incidental its location is. And of course, we also understand that this is the place where the Garden of Eden existed. This is the place where Adam first built an altar after he ate from the fruit of the tree and wanted to atone. He built an altar on this place. This is the place, the very dust from which Adam was formed is from this place. So this place that God hasn't revealed yet to the people back in Deuteronomy, this is the place where it all began. And this is the place where it all exists. This is the place where the foundation stone exists inside the Holy of Holies, upon which rests the Ark of the Covenant, the foundation stone, Even Ashdiyah, the place from which the entire world was created. So this place is everything. It's a microcosm of the entire universe of all creation. So yeah, it's a very important place. It is very, very, very dear to Hashem, and it is very, very dear to Hashem's people, and it is very dear to all of creation. So, patience. God hasn't revealed the place yet to the children of Israel who are about to enter the land, but God will in due time. And today, of course, we know exactly the place. We know precisely the place. Today we have different complications, and of course those are political complications, political slash religious complications. We all know that despite the fact that Israel liberated the Temple Mount in 1967, that the government of Israel at that time gave control, day-to-day control of the Mount to the Muslim Waqf. Actually, they gave control of the Muslim holy places on the Mount to the Waqf. However, the Muslim Waqf quickly interpreted that as being the entire Mount, and the Israeli governments have rarely ever contested that. Currently, there is, as everybody knows, a reawakening in Israel, and people are rediscovering the Temple Mount, the place of the Holy Temple, and people are reconnecting to it, and more people are going up. And with this renewal of this love for Hamakom, the place, for the place where Hashem will see us, and where we will be seen by Hashem, and where we will see Hashem's presence, is an awakening, and more people are going up. And this has also awakened our government, and our government has taken a few steps toward trying to strengthen and revitalize its sovereignty in the Temple Mount. And this, of course, greatly worries the Muslim Waqf, which is controlled by Jordan and has the day-to-day administrative authority of the Mount. And of course, as their desire is that no Jew will ever go up on the Mount, and as they have said, and as Abu Mazen, the president of the PA, has said many times, that the Jews are filthy, and our feet contaminate the Temple Mount every time we go up. Of course, they deny, and this is a new denial, because historically, from the days of Muhammad, they understood the significance of Jerusalem to the Jews, and they understood that there was a holy temple built there. But today they deny it. Anyway, so as we know, 2 weeks ago, on the 9th of Av, there was a big brouhaha on the Temple Mount, because there was happened that this year, the 9th of Av, occurred also on the day of a Muslim holiday, which, by the way, had nothing to do with the Temple Mount, but they were celebrating on the Temple Mount. And the Palestinian Authority and the Waqf and others sent out the message to their people: come to the Mount, because we're going to make a big fuss and make sure that those Jews don't go up, which is what they tried to do. And as we know, after a standoff, the police cleared a way for the Jews to go up, and over 1,000 Jews went up on Tisha B'Av, and this was much to the disappointment and the chagrin of the Muslim powers to be that tried to prevent it. In fact, the Waqf, it was just reported yesterday that the Waqf officially sent in its resignation to the King of Jordan, saying, we failed to prevent the Jews from coming up, and the fact that we failed and they came up on a Muslim holiday set a precedent that Jews can now come up to the Temple Mount even on Muslim holidays, which up till now really hasn't happened. With Muslim holiday, the Jews don't go up. So they see it as a real failure. Now, I posted on Facebook just yesterday a very, very fascinating article. There's a lot of behind the scenes, and there's a whole struggle going on among various Muslim nations for control over the Temple Mount. Now, Jordan, of course, has control because it has the Waqf. And the King of Jordan, this is very important for him because he claims that he is a direct descendant of Muhammad, and this is why he gets the guardianship of this holy place. Okay. Now, other players have gotten involved in the past couple of years. Turkey, right? Erdogan, who considers himself to be one of the representatives of the Muslim Brotherhood. You know, he's a big Muslim Brotherhood guy. He wants to take over, so he has been investing millions in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, and millions in trying to stir up trouble on the Temple Mount. And he's been very successful at this. And he has been threatening Jordan, which then causes Jordan to become more radical in its demands. Okay, so Jordan is in a contest now with Turkey over maintaining control of the Temple Mount. So if Turkey's going to, threaten trouble because Jews are going up, then Jordan, of course, has to outdo that. So in order to gain another ally in its struggle to maintain its dominance on the Temple Mount, Jordan opened up its ranks among the Waqf and included a few players from the Palestinian Authority. Now, turns out that those Palestinian Authority players were the ones who were behind the trouble 2 weeks ago on Tisha B'Av, and that the Muslim Waqf was resigning because they were protesting the fact that they have to deal now with these people even more radical than they are, and who may threaten their own control on the Temple Mount. So it's a big inter-Arab mess now. Enter Saudi Arabia, who would also love to be the dominant player on the Temple Mount. And they're becoming much, much closer to Israel. And interestingly enough, the Saudi Salafi branch of Islam does not give any significance, religious significance, to Jerusalem or the Temple Mount. They have Mecca, they have Medina. These are the heart and soul of the religion of Islam, of the nation of Islam. They don't need. So if they were to take over the Waqf of the Temple Mount, their attitude might be very different. Maybe they could care less. So anyway, Israel, this presents a tremendous opportunity for Israel. If the government is aggressive and dedicated toward restoring and strengthening Israeli sovereignty, and of course the first road mark of sovereignty would be allowing and protecting open prayer for Jews on the Temple Mount. So if Israel is serious, and we're having elections in 2 weeks, we'll see what kind of government we're going to get, then these cracks and these inter-Arab struggles concerning the Temple Mount present a very, very opportune moment historically for Israel to reassert its sovereignty and to correct the horrible, tragic, and stupid mistake it made after the 67 war in relinquishing control of the Temple Mount. So, all the way from the days of Avraham to the days of Moshe, just before entering the land, all the way to today, the Temple Mount and its centrality in the story of the people of Israel, and It's centrality to our lives and our prosperity and our well-being and our peace today. And it's all there. It's all there in the Torah. It's all there in this week's Parashat. And it also says in the Parashat, you're going to be far away. But don't worry. When you want to go to the Holy Temple, there's peace in the land, and your property will be safe, even as you journey to the Holy Temple for your festivals, because that's the promise. That's the promise of Israel. That's the promise of the Torah. That's the promise of God. Thanks for being with me.